Here's your report.
Thanks, Jane. I wish I could hire a whole team of yous.
Try posting a job on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest professional network. Unlike resumes, LinkedIn gives a real-time view into a candidate's skills, experiences, and more.
Let's do it. You're irreplaceable, Jane, but another you would be great.
Find your perfect match with LinkedIn. Post your free job at linkedin.com/achieve. That's linkedin.com/achieve. Terms and conditions apply.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and neurodiversity advocate and professional speaker, here as always with my co-host and producer, Mr. Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Hi, everybody. Super excited to be here for another wonderful episode with a fantastic guest.
Yeah, this is a really cool one. I mean, this is a big get, right? And it's not a visual podcast, but she just was like, "Aw," when I said that. Athena, would you care to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for having me on your podcast. My name is Athena Stagias. By training, I am a speech language pathologist. I consider myself a social cognitive therapist and executive functioning specialist as well. And right now I work at the Quad Preparatory School in Manhattan, a school for twice exceptional students. And I am their clinical affairs liaison and chief executive functioning specialist.
Man, I need a chief executive functioning specialist.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
So, I mean, there aren't too many schools like Quad Prep in the world, right? Can you explain to us, why does it exist? Who are the kids who go there? Paint us a picture. From what I've heard, it's basically Hogwarts. So I just give me my letter. Give me my letter, Athena.
Maybe not exactly like Hogwarts, but we definitely do something really, really special here at Quad Prep. So we're a K-12 nonprofit school in Manhattan that works with twice exceptional students. And I'm sure all your listeners know what that means, but we have students with such unique gifts and dynamic thinking. There are so many strengths that they have, their curiosity, their interests, passions. And, they're incredibly enthusiastic about the things that mean so much to them. And on the same end, the other exceptionality being they struggle with social emotional concepts, social cognition, executive functioning, mental health. They have some sensory needs. So we provide a place for these students to be able to learn and grow. We personalize their education in order to fit their needs, but also highlight their strengths. And we do, I'm honestly amazed every time I come in here because there is something different happening every single day. I have seen these incredible these boat structures. I've seen a whole theater production here. I've seen spelling bees and pie number recitations. It's just so cool working here. I love how dynamic not just our students are, but the staff is here. And every day there's just something new. And I feel so energetic and energized being here.
Yeah, I remember that. There are just days where the whole building is buzzing. there's just a lot of really cool stuff happening. So how did you end up at Quad?
Yeah. So, in terms of my career path, I always knew I wanted to help people. But for a lot of people who don't want to take the route of medicine, I was trying to find a way to do that by choosing a program or choosing a career path that was able to make a difference. And I came across speech pathology through a high school internship that I had to do to graduate. And so that was my path. I met a woman. I'm from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I met a woman there whose son went to my school, and I loved everything that she did. She worked with autistic students and did a lot of social cognition that really amazed me in a way that was so understanding of the students and so approachable. And I wanted to be her, basically. And so, I went to, unfortunately, and fortunately too, I loved my undergraduate experience at Franklin and Marshall College, but they did not have a speech program. So I majored in psych there. And then I went on to NYU, where I received a Master of Science in Communicative Sciences and Disorders. And while I was there, I ended up interning at the Children's Evaluation and Rehabilitation Center, which is where I learned a lot about social thinking, executive functioning, and I found it fascinating. So I was really looking to see, are there any jobs that are exclusively focused on this? And I worked at a New York City charter school where that was the case for a couple of years. And then I ended up actually on a professionals tour of Quad, and I fell in love. I thought it was such a cool space. I remember seeing a bike in the hallway for students to bike on. And I remember seeing these learning spaces outside of the classroom and hearing about just the incredible amount of integration that happened between clinicians and staff and academic staff here, that I thought I need to work here. I love everything that they're doing here. So I applied to be a speech pathologist. I started here in the summer of 2019, which was wild because that next school year was COVID.
Welcome to the team.
That was, I have to say, while it was exhausting being someone working in education during that time, we did it so well here. I think because we personalize our program here to each student, we were able to really successfully transition to Zoom in a way where a lot of it was synchronous. Obviously it was not perfect, and obviously our students are much better learners in person, but we did it. We managed. So came back. I was looking more for, just growth opportunities. And so I ended up applying for a role as the associate clinical director here for a couple of years at the lower school. And then last year, in talking with our head of school and talking about executive functioning, I spent the whole year creating an executive functioning curriculum, kind of a vertical scope and sequence where I want to see K through 12, what growth I want to see, as well as a horizontal scope and sequence. And that was done in partnership with a lot of people here, but also with Sarah Ward, the executive functioning specialist and speech pathologist who has so many incredible ideas and tools. We partnered with her. We did consultations. She did a school visit. And so through all that work, my role was created. And so now I get to do, I have a lot of different places where I'm providing support, but truly my goal is to make sure that, for all of our students who the majority of them are struggling with some aspect of executive functioning, that they are receiving some level of programming here that supports their growth in that area, because I want them to show off their gifts. They have so many incredible things in their brains that I want kind of put out into the world. And for some of them, for a lot of them, what's holding them back is their struggle with executive functioning. And in some ways, that's so heartbreaking. I see a lot of kids here with these big ideas and they just don't know how to start. They don't know how to organize those ideas. They don't know how to plan that project. And I think that's in some ways incredibly discouraging for them. And for our students here, they've been in school environments that were not always supportive. And I don't want them to ever feel that way. I don't ever want them to feel stuck. And I know I can't solve every stuck moment, but I want to do as much as I can to minimize those stuck moments or reduce the amount that they have so that they feel like they can shine and show off those gifts.
Oh my gosh. Jake, how are we on our cloning technology? Can we clone Athena?
I need to clone myself here.
There's not enough of us, that's for sure. So tell me this then, like, because I totally agree with you, right? That, I mean, I think one of the things that all neurodivergent people have in common is some sort of executive dysfunction. And there is nothing more heartbreaking than watching a kid who's got the next Percy Jackson in his head and just can't get the infrastructure to make it happen. So, like, what does a K through 12 vertically aligned EF program look like?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, some big picture thinking, what I wanted our students to be able to do is be able to accomplish any academic task, social tasks, and daily living tasks. I wanted our students to be able to write that essay, to be able to plan their time after school with their, extracurricular activities, to be able to plan their assignments. I wanted students to be able to read a room and know what's going on in that room. I want students to be able to understand the passage of time. So all in all, I want them to have the skills that require them to just to participate in everyday life. Things that, they're all going to be writing emails at some point. They're all going to be posting on social media. They're all going to need to attend appointments and be on time to things. And so, I wanted to teach them skills that were obviously academic related, but that made them adults that were able to go into the world and participate like anyone else can. A lot of the things that I do here, I try to make them fun. I try to make them exciting because when they're first learning about it, it might feel very sensitive, right? I think we're highlighting things that are challenging for them. And I want everything that I do to be approachable because eventually they're going to need to do some of these things in classes where it's much harder. And so I want them to learn the tools in a fun way. I did a whole social emotional lesson recently with them on anti-bullying too. And I did it from a science perspective, like the bystander effect. And I think we just need to reach these kids through avenues that are of high interest to them. Otherwise, they're not going to care. And it's not because they don't want to care. It's because I think they truly need to see certain things from different perspectives and need to see things in different ways in order to understand its importance. And then they can go on and be these amazing people in the world. So yeah, our vertical scope and sequence has so many different things we're working on, how to eventually they're going to be taking exams. And then we have a horizontal scope and sequence of, okay, I want to make sure that every year we're touching upon certain skills because by the time they're in 12th grade, the way that you stop and read the room in kindergarten is going to be very different from the way that you stop and read the room when you're a senior in high school. So, every year there's a goal of hitting certain targets. And that is happening not just in related services, it's happening in academics, it's happening in specials, it's happening in electives. We are doing it across the board. Everyone is a member of the EF team here. And that's what I keep telling them. So, again, our students, they struggle with the generalization piece. They struggle with understanding how to take what they're learning in one context and applying it to another. And so when we have this full team effort, it becomes just so much easier. And yeah, that's a lot, but that is what we're trying to do here with our scopes and sequences here.
The one thing you're saying throughout has been that, at least for me, from what I've been taking away from like the last few parts of what you've been saying, is that it helps all students learn more about the people around them rather than just like, that's my science teacher, that's my math teacher. It's like, no, this is your science teacher, but there's more to them than just being a science teacher. And like, this is my math teacher, but at the same time, there's more to them than just being a math teacher. And I think that's so critical for like students in general, but also like anyone within the neurodiverse population. Because then we get to see people, as people, not, the thing they do or the job they take.
Yeah. Absolutely. I do sometimes, and I think we all fall into this, right? We have such tunnel vision about what people are doing. And we often don't stop to think about all the behind the scenes stuff that goes into whatever we do. And executive functioning is one of them. You need to know how to manage your paper and your space in order to write out a math equation. You need to know the components of a science experiment and all the headings and how it's going to look and have that visual of what done looks like in order to participate successfully in science. And so you're not just a scientist in science, you are you're thinking about executive functioning in there. You're thinking about writing in there. You're thinking about your time management in there. And that goes for the adults as well, too. And so I think this helps the students think a little bit more globally. I think when things are hard for kids, it's really, really hard. And it impacts so many parts of their day. So trying to make it easier in one way.
I think even talking about this, not only does it show sort of like real time what your job is, but it's also pushes back in a very meaningful way against this idea that gifted kids have it easy, that twice exceptional kids, like, well, you're so smart. Well, gosh, yes, I am. And all these other things, right? The emotionality that comes with it, the intensity, you mentioned the sensory needs. I have a gazillion questions about how you manage the sensory needs of students in well, gosh, how would we describe the sensory experience of Manhattan? Is it a lot? So, like, it's not easy. And I think the more we push back on that narrative, we're having less of that expectation effect. When a kid does struggle, people are like, but you're gifted. How come you're upset? Versus like, I'm gifted because I'm upset, right? So I think that's really, it's very authentic, and we're all about authenticity here at.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point. So I wear a lot of hats here. One thing that I do is admissions visits for prospective students. And I sometimes give tours to the parents as well. And I've had to kind of have a lot of really difficult conversations when they see what's possible for their student in a learning environment versus what their student has been getting. And the fact of the matter is there are not a lot of places that are built for the twice exceptional human. There are not a lot of spaces where they are able to thrive in the way that they should. This world is just not built for them sometimes. And, we're doing one small part by building a school to support them, to make them feel like the amazing humans that they are. And sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. Sometimes I sit here and I think, am I doing enough to help them when they actually go into the real world? Is this going to support them? But I think I often take a step back and look at the parents' reactions when they're here. And I think they think like, thank God there is a space. Thank God that there is somewhere that my kid can go and feel safe and feel understood and feel supported from a sensory needs perspective, from a social, emotional, social cognition perspective. I really have to sometimes step back and think about it in that way. Because sometimes it just feels like a really big task. It's not easy for them. It's really not. It can be, but I think we have a lot of work to get there.
And sort of natural follow-up question here is, what's one of the things we can do to help to improve what we're doing to get us there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think that in general, schools need to be focusing more on social emotional, social cognition, executive functioning, sensory supports, because our twice exceptional students are not the only ones that need this. I mean, every student in some way needs some sort of support, and it's not a one-size-fits-all experience. That is a lot of onus on the teachers and on the staff of schools. And so in general, I think a much bigger issue, but just providing that support and energy financially to schools, time-wise to schools. Teachers and clinicians and staff at schools are trying their best, and they just need more resources. If we want to make this more global, we need to start there, and we need to start taking education much more seriously, which is a whole other can of worms. But I think on the smaller end, I think it's just understanding, what our strengths and areas of growth are, and taking time to self-reflect. And as adults, we can do that. And I think modeling that for the students as well shows them that it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to talk about what we're really good at and what's difficult for us too. What's really interesting is that a lot of our students know that they're really good at things. And I think it's hard for them to then process or understand that some things are difficult for them too. And that's for every human, that's for everyone. But I think when you're told you are gifted or you have these gifts, it's hard to shift then your perspective. And on top of that, you have some things that you can work on, and they're going to be really challenging because of, how everyone's brain is wired, how your brain is wired. So for me, where it all begins is that self-reflection piece, that metacognition piece, that learning about yourself and learning how your brain works. And then, once students understand the why, they're so much more open to the tools and to the supports. I can spend a lot of time telling myself that I'm really good at remembering things, that I'm really good at remembering a list, and that I don't need a list. But then I walk into the supermarket and I forget 5 things. And so once I sit down and say, okay, Athena, you're not really good at remembering things. And I sit down and I make that list, I go to the supermarket and I don't have to do a second trip. I don't have to sacrifice a recipe. It's going to make my life so much easier just by using that simple tool. But I think in order to get there, you have to have the reflection of, okay, what is difficult for me? Why do I have to use this? And for everyone, that's hard, but especially for kids who have such incredible gifts too.
You're speaking directly to my soul with the grocery shopping thing. Every time I go, my wife's like, I'm going to text you a list. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. My husband would have a lot to say right now. He's like, yes.
He's actually our surprise guest.
You say you need the list. You should use the list. But, we also have to love people through the process, right?
Well, absolutely. Jake, I'm sure somewhere Jack is nodding vigorously.
Absolutely, like a million times over, as we go to the supermarket and I keep grabbing random looking things off the shelf and, putting them in our shopping cart. So
Totally.
I told Jack I'd get her a spray bottle. She'd be like, no.
I mean, she'd use it too.
Somebody's got to keep you in line.
I'm in a totally different place now too, where I have an 8-month-old and I walk through the supermarket and I'm like, this could be a perfect recipe for him. I'm sure I'll have time later on this weekend to make this, involved recipe that I saw on Instagram. Yeah, it's not good.
No, it isn't. Very human, thankfully, but
yes.
You're ridiculous. So one of the things that you mentioned before that I'd like to swing back to is you said you try and make it fun. You try and make it a game, because I said before, I think all neurodivergent people need help with executive functioning. I think if there's another truth, it's that they all hate working on it. I don't know a single kid is like, boy, this thing I suck at and is really hard to learn, I want to do more of this. So yeah, they're paying tuition and yeah, they go there, but like, how the hell do you get the buy-in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it starts with the adults, right? We have to have the adults buy into it. And the adults have to make it fun. If the adults are coming at it from an apprehensive perspective and they don't feel confident in it, we're not going to get anywhere. So we give our staff a lot of PD. I have a PD ready for our upper school staff tomorrow. I just gave one to our lower school staff. I really feel that in order for our students to succeed, our staff needs to feel very prepared. And we give a lot of demonstrations. I do a lot of consultative work where I go into the classroom and I try to show teachers and clinicians, how can we make this happen in real life? Because I think some of my solutions sound great in theory, or maybe in a one-to-one setting or a private session. But how are we going to make this happen in a classroom setting where there are so many adults working with these kids? There are other kids that we need to focus on. And so it requires a lot of creative thinking. But if the staff is supplied with this knowledge, we can do that thinking together. So one, the adults, the kids, definitely fun. I was just talking with our executive functioning coordinator at the upper school today about some of the lessons that we have for our executive functioning class. And we were talking about, a lot of our students really don't like to write for a variety of reasons. One being executive functioning, the actual process of writing, coming up with your thoughts, the language piece. And so how can we make some of the EF writing tasks more fun? And so we've been talking about ideas like planning a vacation, or tell me, write about, how would you change this anime episode that you really loved? Things that are relevant to them and that make them feel like you're listening to them. That to me is the way that we get to the kids. And that requires a lot of rapport building. We will get nowhere at this school without humility and rapport building. You have to check your ego at the door. You have to really buy into the students, really buy into their interests. We need you to really feel this mission. And you need to just stop and listen to what the students are interested in and make it genuine too. I don't know a lot about Roblox and Minecraft, but I have definitely had a lot of conversations about them. And I do my own research. My commute is filled with a lot of research on things like this. I had a student that was really interested in chess. And so we tried to infuse that into everything that we were doing, and talking about EF and in terms of chess was a great avenue to kind of get in there. When we talk about writing, a lot of students will tell me, I don't need to know how to write because I'm never going to have to write a multi-paragraph essay once I leave here. And that's possibly true. It might not be in the form that you're seeing it, but you're certainly going to be writing things, whether, you're writing a report for how something like a post-mortem, or whether you're writing a critique or a review. A lot of our kids love video games. If you're writing a review of a video game, or if you're writing the storyline of a video game, you have to know how to write. You have to know how to put ideas together. And it might not look like an academic, multi-paragraph, multi-page essay, but the concepts are still the same and they're easily transferable. And we also have to sit and explain the why to our students too, all the time. If they don't understand why we're doing something, I get it. Why do it then? Just because you say so? No, because we really do think that there is something of value here. And let me help you explain where I think this might help you and your future self.
Yeah, I think that's the key to reaching this population, is they just want to know why. Right? Give them a meaningful explanation, give them that context, let them peek around the corner. People ask me this in therapy all the time. They're like, well, why are we doing this? I'm like, I'll tell you. Like, here's how it serves our goals, right? I think that's treating somebody with respect and dignity. It also, I think it engages them in the process. One of the things I think is just so refreshing about talking to you is they're the old school. They'll be like, well, you're going to do this because we told you to. I'm never going to write a 3-paragraph essay once I leave here. You might. So you bet, like, you might not. That's absolutely possible. There's still value to have the skills, and here's why. So I just think that's, it's just that extra beat of connection goes such a long way.
Yeah. A lot of the work that we do here would not be possible without that really secure foundational rapport building. The rapport is huge. And it might take us a while to get to, teaching your kid the next type of math problem or the next lesson in history. We're not going to do that until we feel like we have a really secure relationship. And sometimes we have to rebuild those relationships. Sometimes we need to kind of check back in. So it's continuous, it's constant. It's not just at the beginning of the year. It needs to be this process of knowing the kids you're working with and them feeling like you know them too. They have to really feel that.
I mean, one thought that kept popping into my head was, so backing up for a second. So I come from having public education experience, both as, a student and a teacher, and then private school education experience as a teacher. So for me, I was thinking like both directions, and how in private school, that's phenomenal and absolutely like love it. But also putting on like the public school hat and thinking about how it is for some of the teachers there. Like I can just imagine like the coworkers I had coming in and being like, that's all great. Yeah, I love it. It's phenomenal. But I also have these standards that I have to meet, and these are all the deadlines being put on me, and here are all the demands being put on me. So I was curious if you could explain a little bit for those kind of teachers and those kind of perspectives, how can you operate and still do these things in those kind of classrooms and make it successful at the same time?
Yeah, I completely hear you. I think there are so many more challenges in a setting where, it's part of our mission here is to do things like this. And so we require ourselves to do this. In a public school setting, every little bit helps. Every little thing that we can do helps our students grow. So even if it's a matter of just putting a stop sign on the outside of a room and just like giving the kids a chance to just see that visual and think, okay, let me stop and let me think about what's going on here, what I need. Even if it's just checking to make sure that their homework is written in their planner. I don't think you need to have this comprehensive executive functioning curriculum in order to make little differences and connect. Because you did this, now this is what's going to happen. Because you wrote your homework down, now you're going to get it done, and you got it done. And so now you feel good and you can go do X, Y, and Z after school, and you don't have to, I don't know, go to detention or whatever it is that a public school will do. That's something that resonates with me a lot. Is it doesn't have to be a whole program. It can be a matter of, I know some of these things are expensive, and I know some of these things take time and energy and money, but it might even be just like putting up a clock on your wall that is labeled with 5 past or, quarter, the half, like really outlining those things so that the student is just seeing it. I think for our population here, but for a lot of students, visuals are so impactful. And so sometimes it's just having a visual available to them just triggers a thought in their brain. So that's what I would say. I don't want this to feel inaccessible to people who don't have the resources or the time or the support from their school, simply because there's just so many other things that they need to be focusing on. There are little things that you can do, and those little things are impactful.
Absolutely. And I love that you're not mentioning curriculum-based stuff, which is something I'm just genuinely really glad to hear. And I didn't mean this question to be, contentious or anything whatsoever. So I hope you don't take it that way. But
no.
Like a key factor is that there's just like little things that you don't need to put, a ton of effort or a ton of like energy into. It's just like, hey, you can print out a picture of a stop sign and, put it on your door. If that's what it takes for some kids to stop and be like, oh, right, I'm coming into a classroom. Let me recenter myself a little bit, like that alone can help with the curriculum aspects as well that a lot of teachers are, stressed about and worried about and trying to manage in a world that isn't really supportive of that.
Yeah. I think another idea that's popping into my head right now is we universally at the upper school set our boards up the same way. So the date is at the top, the agenda is on the side with due dates, with homework, just so that when the students come in, they see that and it's a visual for them, because the language, if we're just telling students, it's so fleeting. They need that visual to be able to see it and then record it into their planners, put it in Google Classroom, whatever it might be. But even little things like that, I just took some tape and taped off the board for everyone in there. So, those are things that make such a huge difference.
Okay. So then let's switch gears a little bit. You have this incredible job serving these incredible kids, right? Tell me, what is it that makes Quad Prep special? Like, what's the secret sauce?
Aside from you, obviously.
Obviously.
No, there are a couple of things that come to mind, but, from a clinical perspective, just going back to being a speech pathologist here, the integration that happens here is unlike anywhere else. We are very thoughtful and purposeful about who is integrating with whom and who is supporting whom, and that academic staff and clinical staff are not siloed. We want them to constantly be working together, and that happens. Our speech pathologists are in ELA and science providing support. Our occupational therapists are in movement, in music, in art. They are in social studies and supporting the assistive technology piece. Our counselors are in lunch and in our social classes. Our learning support often works with our clinicians or with the staff and provides this integrative experience for our students. And I think that's why our students end up learning as much as they do. I think it's this like multi-sensory, multimodal type of learning that helps them think about things with, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if we help a student with alternative seating and we help a student understand the perspective of a character from a clinical perspective, they're going to access that academic information so much easier. If we help them understand the perspective of war, and we help them understand, what led to this war from a social cognitive standpoint, they're going to do really well with the project then, or they're going to be able to go home and talk about what they learned in school. And so that's where I think Quad secret sauces. And I think, you can ask an academic or you can ask someone else. And there's so many things here. We have, I truly think the personalization that happens here is very special. I really think that we have really close relationships with our parents and we provide a lot of opportunities to connect with them. And there's so much that goes into, everything that we do here. But that to me is what really pushes our students to grow here.
It's so refreshing to hear because the integration of all this stuff is, I genuinely think, how it's meant to be. I think that Jake is one of the finest teachers I've ever met because he inherently understands that you can't just teach a kid math without understanding who they are, their personality, their emotional strengths, their emotional weaknesses, their executive functioning piece. Like having that push in, not just in social skills class, but in math and science where it's more operational. I mean, that's when those kids are going to really link to those skills because they're tangible. Like you're seeing it in like a very results oriented way, which is awesome because a lot of times what we're selling kids is like, you're going to need this someday, we promise.
We won't tell you when though.
Yeah.
But it's helpful.
It's probably going to look different than we described it. And you probably won't remember it, but we're helping. We're on your side. We promise. That is a really cool secret sauce. Normally, I would say your secret's safe with us, but this is a podcast, so
now it's out. But hey, I've even learned things too. Oh my gosh, I remember, in the past, before I started working at Quad Prep, I was trying to do the zones of regulation with kids, and it's like, here's a fidget you can use if you're feeling, yellow zone, and I had no idea what I was offering, and I've learned so much from our OTs in particular here that my practice is so different now. So it's just cool on a personal level too, to feel like you're thinking about this so much more globally.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When you work with kids, they teach you, right? And I think that it's such a cool story because I have a similar experience, not with zones of regulation, but we had somebody come in like, this is how you self-regulate using tactile stimulation. And she's like, you can teach this lesson. I was like, hey kids, look, this is a thing that will calm you down. They're like, do you believe that? I was like, not really, but this is what I do when I need to calm down. And it's like, oh, wow. These kids don't want me to say the company line. They want me to say the things that's true.
Yeah.
That was like one of those things you look back on. You're like, oh, I am learning from these kids, right? It isn't just me shaping them. They shape us right back. And
yeah,
that's so cool, right?
It's so cool. And I just want to add the caveat. Zones of regulation is great.
Oh,
I love the curriculum, but I think it's such a great example of needing the combination of so many minds in order to make it the most effective.
The adaptation of it to other mediums, other means.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to your skill as a clinician to be able to adapt it, right? My mentor in grad school, he's like, I got to do all of these research studies in grad school because I was very good at doing CBT exactly like the manual said. And they looked at me, he's like, you're never going to be that guy. I'm like, no, I'm not.
You can't be. You can't be, though.
It's not me, right?
Things don't exist in a vacuum. There so many things influence so many other things.
And when you're in a school, which is like a living milieu, right? It's its own intervention. And when you walk in the building, you know what kind of day it is, right? The vibe in the building is an actual thing.
Yes.
And especially with how sensitive our kids are, right? I mean, you'll have kids who like, if there's drama in the upper school, you can't tell me the kindergartners don't feel it. Something's off.
Yes.
The wind is from the northwest, right?
Feelings are so contagious. Yes. But it makes it fun to work here, right? I love working here, and that it's part of the fun. It's part of the fun.
You've got to enjoy it if you're going to do this work, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's love and joy in it. And I think our kids can feel that from us, right? I tell my kids all the time, like, I love you. I'll run through a brick wall for you. And that means sometimes I'm going to be tough on you because I'm your therapist, not your friend. Like, I love you and I'm going to hold you to a very high standard, right? That's foundationally, it's love and boundaries, right? And I think all three of us with three different but very interrelated jobs in this field all do that love and boundaries piece, right? And that's, and that's how we're helping these kids. And that's why we started this podcast, honestly. Like, let's talk about what this looks like.
Yeah. I think with any kid, there are going to be times where there's pushback. There are going to be times where things are hard for them and they want to feel the support and that you're behind them so that if they fail gracefully. If they feel like you're there to catch them, they're more likely to do it. Yeah, it's tricky for any kid, for any human to try something that's hard for them.
And they'll know we're there, right? That's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to ramp up for our final questions.
Oh, man.
Very excited about this. Jake, I always go first. Do you want to go first this time?
Ooh, I get to go first this time? Okay.
Fair, right?
That's true. That's fair. So my question is, what's your favorite word and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'll tell you what my favorite word to say is. So I am very, very Greek. Grew up with parents from Greece who came here. I went to Greek school. We would go back to Greece every summer. And there's a Greek word that, I used to ask my dad, what's the longest Greek word that you know? And I would just love when he would say it. It was otorinolaryngologos, which is an ENT, an ear, nose, throat doctor. So it's not anything cool. But I just loved when he would say it. And so, as kids, we would try to learn how to say it. So that word always sticks out to me in my brain.
That's incredible.
I need you to say it one more time.
Otorinolaryngologos.
Man, that's a solid accent right there. It's and the gifted school Jake and I worked on was in a Greek church. So they had their Greek festival every year. And all the old ladies in the church center would always tell me that they had the best food and not to eat the other person's food. And I was like, it's all delicious, ladies. It's really good. Spanakopita forever.
I have to say, both my husband's also as equally as Greek as me. Both of our moms make great Greek food. No one is better than the other if they're listening.
You can play this at Christmas and be like, look, I said it on a podcast.
I said it publicly.
But who do you really like more? No, I'm just kidding. Also, and you said you grew up in Allentown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever go to World of Ice Cream?
Yes, across from Dorney Park.
Nope. I was like, when I think of Allentown, that's where we'd always take our kids when we were leaving camp. We would go to Dorney Park, stop at World of Ice Cream, and then drive home. And I was like, I gotta ask.
And it's still there, I think.
If it survived COVID, I will be very happy. I don't even know if the ice cream is good. But it was always right there.
Yes.
And it was between you and the highway. And like you'd stop and you'd get ice cream. They have big portions. You got to give them that. I mean, it was like,
yes. But I lived in New York City for almost 10 years before I moved to New Jersey. And, it changes what you think about food because you have so many good things here. But it's such a Lehigh Valley staple there. It has some sentimental value too.
Absolutely, right? I mean, not all ice cream can be Van Leeuwen.
Right.
I dream about their ice cream. It's
so good.
It's unbelievable. Jake, have you ever had Van Leeuwen ice cream?
Don't hate me for this. I'm not a fan of ice cream. It's the cold and the texture for me. It's always been that way.
All right. Well, this is going to be a solo podcast from now on.
Yeah.
You're fired.
All right.
Feel like the end of the Tenacious D album. Last week, Jake quit the band. There's my pop culture reference. I always got to do one.
We got at least two this time.
What? Oh, that Rick Percy Jackson.
That was a good one.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, now since we're in New York, I'll ask you my question. If you could have one superhero on speed dial, who would it be?
Oh gosh. Now this is where I lose the kids sometimes because I don't watch the Marvel movies. I am such a, I need realistic things to see. So this is tricky for me. I don't know. such a hard question. I don't know if I'm going to have a good answer other than the generic ones. But maybe I can create my own superhero and create, especially in New York City. I hate public transportation here. That's one thing that I never liked. So I'm going to create some sort of superhero who fixes all of that for me so that I am never waiting for a train. My train never breaks down. It's always there on time. I love following my schedule, and I love when things work my way, as many people do. And so that's my superhero. I leave it to you all to come up with a name, but that's what I want in life.
Infrastructure person or something?
Schedule man.
Yes.
The best city councilor.
Actually funding the city. Wait, that's not a superhero. That's just policy. I love how this podcast just gets increasingly left wing every episode.
No.
I mean, I feel like you can't avoid it really with anything related to education.
Right. No,
Yes.
We're just leaning into it.
Seriously.
Also, I just spoken like a true New Yorker. It's just like, yeah. Let the cave people fight. Like, somebody fix the 8 train. I need to get uptown.
I used to have a very long commute from the financial district to Astoria, and it sometimes got wild. So that is something that needs to be absolutely fixed. I've spent way too much time in hot subway stations.
For right now, I'll assign you the Flash. He can run you places very quickly, but then we'll work on getting Infrastructure Man and his sidekick Schedule Boy to See, this is why I get a podcast. Hard-hitting journalistic questions like this. Here for it. So we've asked our final questions, and now, Athena, you can leave our audience with a word of wisdom. Anything you'd like to start us with?
Yeah, let me think, because a couple of different thoughts have popped into my head. So I'm trying to select the most profound and interesting one, I think what I want to leave everyone with is that I want to go back to that idea of like, things don't have to be complicated to be effective. I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel, and I don't think you have to make these huge sweeping changes to your life in order to make the children or the students that you're working with successful. I think in general, as people in education, we spend a lot of time thinking about the kids that we work with, and we spend a lot of time trying to problem solve to begin with. And so I don't want to add stress or more work to people's plates just to be able to support their students' needs. Implementing change and supporting your students does not require a tremendous amount of work and effort. If you have that energy and that time, I don't want to burn anyone out. I feel like we need really good educators right now. And a lot of people are leaving the fields for a variety of reasons. And so that's something that's really important to me, is that we can use simple little changes. It can be just about saying like, do you have all your things in your backpack versus what do you need in your backpack to go home? Changing it like that to just change the way that the student thinks about the question, thinks about the situation. It can be so simple as just the language that you're using. So I think that's what I want to leave people with. I'm very fortunate in my role. I have a lot of support. Our head of school is so incredibly supportive here. My supervisor, so supportive. They help me be able to kind of create this vision that I have for EF here. And I fully recognize that not everyone has that. So it's okay to do little things because they add up.
I love that, because it all feels so big so often, right?
Yeah.
Reminding ourselves that the little things go a long way, because I think the little things not only become the big things, but I think they feed them, right? I mean, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Right. And something as simple as saying hi to a kid when they walk in the door can be the difference between a good day and a bad day. And that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And you have to focus on yourself too. What are you going to do to be able to do that? Because we can't support our students unless we're kind of supporting ourselves, and that's easier said than done. But yeah, these kids need a really strong support system.
They really do. All right. Well, then on that inspiring note, right, we will keep fighting the good fight and keep helping those little changes turn into big outcomes. So for everybody out there, I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, here as always with the fabulous and fantastic Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Hi, everybody. I mean, well, I guess I'm just saying bye, you know, but
Hi, Jake. Yeah, that's right. We could re-record this, but I think we'll probably just let it be what it is. But yes, you want to say goodbye, Jake?
I will say goodbye this time. Goodbye to all of our listeners. I also just want to say, Athena, it was phenomenal hearing your story and just hearing your thoughts on a lot of things regarding neurodiversity, executive functioning, education, and how all of these things come together. So, thank you.
No, thank you guys for having me. It was so fun chatting with you. Yeah, I had such a great time here.
You were a delight, and we'll definitely have you back.
Thank you.
Time. So go help your kiddos at Quad, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.